We all know that getting a good night's sleep is important, and that not getting enough sleep can have some pretty bad consequences. But exactly how bad? Studies have shown that sleep deprivation can alter your performance, health, and mood in a number of ways. When you don't get enough sleep, you're likely to be more distractible, make poor decisions, and be more forgetful. You're also at higher risk for heart attacks, obesity, and a number of other serious health consequences. What I'm going to focus on today is a very specific effect of sleep deprivation on mood, namely on anxiety. Now, I know that for most people our age, getting enough sleep doesn't really seem like a priority. It's hard to work in a good 8 hours when there's parties to go to, papers to write, friends staying out with, and a bunch of other important and seemingly life or death things to do. Okay, so before I get into how sleep and anxiety work together to make your life less than fun, I'm going to go through some statistics, so bear with me real quick as I do that, because it'll be important later, I promise. The number that most people are familiar with when it comes to how much sleep you should be getting is 8 hours, which is about right for a large chunk of the population. What some people don't know, however, is that that number changes over your lifetime. For people over 65, about 7 to 8 hours is considered optimal, with as little as 5 or 6 considered adequate. If you're under 65 but over 18, you want to shoot for 7 to 9 hours. And you really do not want to get less than 6, no matter how alert you think that Red Bull makes you. As you look at younger and younger age groups, the recommended amount of sleep goes up, which is one reason why a lot of people are starting to push for later school start times. It's really hard to work in 11 hours of sleep when you have to get up at 5 or 6 to make it to your first class. I will be the first to admit that college students generally don't get between 7 and 9 hours of sleep. We are really bad at sleeping. The average is actually between 6 and 6.9 hours. One small study at Brown University found that 73% of students reported some kind of sleep problem. And similar findings keep cropping up again and again, indicating that this is a problem at colleges everywhere. When you think about it, it's not that surprising that sleep deprivation is such a common problem. There are a lot of things that contribute to sleeping problems, especially poor sleep hygiene and any number of sleep disorders. Despite the name, sleep hygiene has nothing to do with how recently you've washed your sheets or if you've showered in the last week, though I really hope you have. Instead, sleep hygiene is about developing good practices that are conducive to restorative sleep and avoiding factors that detract from good sleep. Alcohol and caffeine, two of college students' favorite substances, are absolutely terrible for sleep hygiene, especially if consumed right before sleep. And I'm sure we've all read some of those studies telling us that looking at screens like your phone or your computer directly before sleep is bad for you. Yeah, listen to those. Okay, so we've been talking a lot about sleep, but what exactly is the relationship between sleep deprivation and your mental health? As it turns out, sleep, or lack of it, is involved in most psychiatric disorders. Psychologists used to believe that it was psychiatric problems that led to sleep disturbances, but it turns out it could work the other way too. Your lack of sleep could lead to some pretty serious psychological disturbances. So let's talk about anxiety. Yay! In small doses, anxiety isn't necessarily a bad thing, and in fact it can be adaptive and help you prepare for the future or trigger your fight or flight response. But in excess, yeah, anxiety can have some pretty negative consequences. Sleep and anxiety are linked in some pretty fundamental ways. Some studies have shown that sleep deprivation intensifies anxiety, and persistent insomnia can actually lead to full-blown anxiety disorders. Even seemingly low-stress situations can produce higher levels of stress and anxiety in people who are sleep-deprived. Unfortunately, higher levels of anxiety can also cause sleep problems, which creates a vicious cycle where lack of sleep leads to anxiety, leads to lack of sleep, never-ending loop of madness. So how can we avoid all of this sleep deprivation and the anxiety that comes with it? Like I said before, it doesn't really come naturally to us college students, but there are some measures that we can take. Some of the more extreme measures involve entire courses devoted to developing better sleep habits or going through electronic behavior therapy. If that sounds like a bit much, there are some less drastic measures that you can take that can still improve your sleep hygiene. Planning your schedule so that you can make sure that you get a good 7 to 9 hours every night is a good first step. One of the most important things when it comes to having good sleep practices is to set up routines and make sure that you always go to bed and wake up around the same times. That's why it's not good to get 3 hours of sleep every night during the week and sleep all weekend. You might feel fine by Sunday afternoon, but trust me, it's gonna screw up your circadian rhythm in the long term. Another big one is avoiding alcohol and caffeine when you know you're going to be going to bed within the next few hours. Turn off your phone and avoid the temptation to scroll through Facebook or Pinterest or whatever it is that's keeping your eyes glued to the screen after you turn the lights out. Taking naps, which we college students love to do, can actually be helpful, but you have to do it correctly. Don't nap too close to your bedtime, and don't nap for hours and hours on end, because then you're basically just sleeping, but during the day, which is, again, not good for your circadian rhythm, and you do not want to screw up your circadian rhythm. Remember, sleep deprivation increases feelings of frustration, anger, and anxiety, so it's really something that you want to avoid. Have a good night, everyone, and I hope you get some good sleep. Thanks to me.